Hello, everyone. This is Carl Opedal. Welcome to our program on Docketing PCT for U.S. filers. We have well over 400 attendees, and as I glance over the list, we have people attending from over 60 countries. We have people attending from every continent except Antarctica. I'm very glad to be here with everybody, and I'm really looking forward to this presentation. Let's talk through a little bit about how this program is going to proceed. First of all, let me mention that this program is sponsored by WIPO. I serve as a consultant for WIPO. Many of you have attended programs where I have been a presenter provided courtesy of WIPO. And today is such a day. WIPO is making it possible for me to be here. I wear two hats sometimes, and today is a day that I'm wearing two hats. Most of the time, I'm wearing a hat that says WIPO on it, and then every now and then, I will be an opinionated private practitioner, and I'll be wearing a hat that says that I'm a cranky patent attorney from the mountains of Colorado, and I will invite all of you to please be aware that I wear two different hats sometimes over the course of a presentation. And when you notice that I'm expressing opinions from a practitioner point of view, please realize that at those times, I'm not speaking for WIPO, I'm speaking for myself. Having said that, my main goal is to provide accurate information to the extent I can about the Patent Cooperation Treaty and about the ePCT system. A standard disclaimer, this is not legal advice. These slides are not legal advice. This webinar is not legal advice. If you listen to this recording later, if you attend this webinar now, if you read these slides, that does not make you a client of my firm. It does not make me your attorney. This is meant to be an educational program. What is the format for today's program? We've set aside 90 minutes for the program. We probably will use up all the time or nearly all the time, but we might not use up every minute of the 90 minutes. Feel free to ask questions as they come up. There's a question panel in this webinar system, and please feel free to write a question in the panel as it comes to mind. You do not need to save up your questions toward the end. My presentation style is that I try to glance over and look at that panel from time to time, and I try to the extent that I can to answer questions as they come up. So don't be bashful. Go ahead and put in questions as they come to mind. Let me do a shout out to the docket clerks that are among our attendees. By this, I mean those people who sit typically in an office that doesn't even have any windows, and you do the docketing. The docket events happen, you enter them into your docket system, you generate reports, you send them out. From time to time, you get to clear docket items, and yet many people in your law firm, many people in your corporation seemingly don't even know you exist. Thank you for being there. You are the boundary line, the line of protection. You are the gutter in the bowling alley that keeps the bowling balls from going over into the next lane. Thank you for being there, and I really mean that. And if I can just offer a thought to everyone else who's attending this webinar, the rest of you, I invite you to go down the hall, or in today's world where people work from home, the equivalent of going down the hall, talk to your docket clerks and say thank you to them, or maybe take them a box of donuts or something. Say thank you to them, and just recognize that probably you didn't even know it, but last week or last month or last year, they saved you from committing malpractice, or they saved you from looking really stupid in front of a client, or they saved the corporation from some bad thing that would have happened. So let's just keep that in mind. This whole webinar today is about docketing of Patent Cooperation Treaty events. You might think nominally that this webinar is directed toward docket clerks. It's actually directed toward everyone who touches the world of Patent Cooperation Treaty, not just the docket clerks. What are the general docketing goals? I'm telling us what we all already know, but let's just review them. Of course, we have a general goal of not letting things go abandoned, except in those cases where that's the exact thing that we actually wanted to have happen. Not missing due dates for action, providing reminders to attorneys and to patent agents, providing reminders to clients. Of course, in this context, in the case of a corporation, the word client might mean the head of a business unit. So for those of you who are in corporate patent departments, when you hear me say client, we have a sort of a shared vocabulary here, a shared terminology that client might mean the head of a business unit or a business decision maker. So you'll hear me use the word client, and for those of you in a corporate patent department, that's you know what client means to you. What are examples of docket events? A docket event might be that the light bulb blinked on over the head of some inventor. That is to say, they invented something. A docket event might be that tomorrow or next week, somebody's about to disclose an invention or a product is about to be sold or offered for sale, publicly disclosed. Patent application may have just gotten filed, a patent application that has the prospect of serving as a priority document. Or some document showed up from a patent office. These are all examples of docket events. I'm telling you what you already know here. By the way, in the category of telling you what you already know, let me just observe that what would delight me, what would make me very happy, is if at the end of our time together here today, at the end of our 90 minutes, if what you can do is lean back in your chair and say, I already knew almost everything that we talked about. If that's what you can say at the end of our 90 minutes, I will be delighted. That will be good news. It will mean that somebody somewhere already shared with you the things you needed to know, or you already figured them out yourself, which is great. And if all I did was reinforce the stuff you already knew, great. And if what I did was fill in a gap here and there, that would be great. But anyway, talking about things you already know. These are examples of docket events. There are also, of course, the nightmare docket events. We all know the kind of nightmare events that we're talking about. The client who calls up on the phone and the first 4 words out of their mouth were, oh, by the way. Oh, by the way. You hate it, right? This drives you crazy. You know that something horrible is about to follow when the first 4 words out of the client's mouth were, oh, by the way. I can't imagine this would be important from the patent point of view, but I thought I would mention that tomorrow we're about to start selling a product, or tomorrow I'm about to get on an airplane. Well, not today with COVID, but tomorrow I'm about to get on a video call and disclose to the whole world such and such, right? Or later today, not tomorrow, later today, we are planning to do such and such. These are the nightmare docket events. Another category of nightmare for many of us, and indeed for many paralegals, for many administrative assistants, for many secretaries, for many docket clerks, is that you have to escalate, right? You would sort of think you only have to mention it once to the attorney or to the patent agent or to the client. Somehow, against all odds, once is not enough. You have to escalate with a second email. Maybe this time you have to make the subject line all capital letters, right? Then you hate it, but now you have to pick up the phone and call. Maybe later use some other method of communication. You all have my sympathy, right? That's easy for me to say, except that in my office, I'm the offender. I'm the offender. I have long-suffering colleagues in my office, assistants, who have to go to the second email or who have to go to the phone call to get me to pay attention to some seemingly simple task that you'd think I would have taken care of a week ago or something. But anyway, I'm just offering sympathy here to the people among our group who have to go through these escalations. Okay, calculating of dates. If you are the person whose job it is to enter something into a docket system, or if you're an attorney or a patent agent, paralegal perhaps, entering something into your own private docket book or docket sheet, you got to calculate dates all the time. You go back and look at what the priority date was that was the starting point for a PCT application, and you add 30 months to it. Most of us get to where we can pretty much automatically add 30 months to anything and usually get the right answer. Priority date plus 22 months, which is for what? It's for filing of a demand. Or we received an international search report, and we have to add 3 months to its mailing date. Except the dang international search report, you get down to the little box where it says what day was it mailed, and it doesn't say. So you have to go look at this other document that shows you what day the international search report was mailed, right? Don't you just hate that? Why can't they just come out and say on the international search report what date it was mailed, right? Anyway, then you add 3 months to it or whatever. And then there's this date, oh, don't you just love this one, working out what is the date of the completion of technical preparations for publication by the International Bureau. We'll talk about that one later. For those of us who are on this program right now in the attendee group who don't know about the date of technical preparations, you're going to love this one. Anyway, you calculate dates, right? And you might sometimes ask yourself, wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice if there were some other place I could look where somebody else calculated the date and I could cross-check their calculations with mine, and if they match, that's great. And if they didn't match, well, then I can just go back and try to figure out why didn't we get the same answer, right? Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't it? A trusted external source for these dates. And if they matched, you could get this little burn, this good feeling, you know. Let's talk for a minute, by the way, about who self-selected into the kind of work that most of us do, right? The people who you could have, you know this, you could have done anything else for a living, but you didn't. You decided to become a docket clerk at a patent firm or a docket clerk in the patent department of a corporation, or you chose to be a paralegal in the world of patents, or you chose to be a patent attorney, or you chose to be a patent agent. You could have done anything else. There's a million other things you could have done. No, you chose to do this, right? And what is the consequence of this? The consequence is, tell me if this is true, every now and then you wake up in the middle of the night covered with sweat, you are scared to death, you wonder why you woke up, and you think about it for a minute and you realize you were having a horrible panic dream wondering, did I miss filing that patent application that I had to file because 12 months was coming around? Or did I miss entering the national phase because the 30 months was coming around? Admit it, this happens to you every now and then. Your work follows you home, it follows you when you go to sleep, and in the middle of the night, you wake up covered with sweat, scared to death. Yeah, you could have done anything else. You could be folding shirts at the Gap right now. There are a lot of things you could be doing. Anyway, wouldn't it be nice if there were a way that you could cross-check your calculations of dates? Wouldn't it be nice? I'm going to tell you a place where you can go and look. Some of you are getting ready to smack the buzzer because you know where I'm going with this one. You know the place where you can go to get these cross-checks of dates, calculated dates for PCT due dates. Oh, by the way, we have a question that has come in from one of our attendees. Will you be having a second webinar on stress management? Let me just answer that question. Let me answer that question. MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR. Take a workshop in MBSR, 8 weeks long. Well, you can't do it now with COVID. Nobody can do anything normal with COVID, but someday when life is back to normal, take an MBSR workshop, 8 weeks. You go somewhere on a Tuesday evening each week for 8 weeks. You do a weekend workshop for all day Saturday, and you learn relaxation techniques. And it is there have been clinical studies done. People who do an MBSR workshop will have lower blood pressure, better life expectancy, lower blood sugar. Your health insurance company won't have to spend as much money keeping you healthy. It's amazing what MBSR can do for you. Anyway, stress management. Anyway, okay. So what can you cross-check with? Well, the answer turns out to be ePCT, as we will discuss at some point. Systems that run in parallel, ePCT. Okay, ePCT has a function that's a little bit like private pair. Some of you already know this. ePCT lets you see the content and status of your pending PCT applications, just like private pair lets you see the content and status of your pending US applications. But does private pair send you warnings of your upcoming due dates in your US applications? No, it does not. But ePCT will send you warnings of upcoming due dates in your PCT applications. Does private pair have a little place you can click and it'll give you a timeline of your upcoming due dates? No, but ePCT does. It provides a timeline that gives you your upcoming due dates. It would be crazy not to make use of the automatic warnings that ePCT would send you, right? Yeah, it would be daft not to take advantage of this, right? Okay, obviously you're going to want to make sure that every pending PCT application that you have any connection with is visible to you in ePCT in this system that is kind of like private pair. Of course, you're going to want to do that if you're not doing it already, right? Yeah. So anytime you file a brand new PCT application, or anytime anybody that you are connected with, if you're in a corporation, you're going to want outside counsel to make it so that every new PCT application that gets filed gets loaded into the part of ePCT that is kind of like private pair, of course. And all the old PCT applications that got filed last week or last month or last year, if they aren't already in the part of ePCT that is kind of like private pair, you're going to want to get those things into the part of ePCT that's like private pair, right? Of course, so that you can get the automatic notifications of upcoming due dates, so that you can get the benefit of this timeline that you can consult anytime you want to see the upcoming due dates. Can admins and docketing staff paralegals set up an ePCT account like for themselves, or is it like USPTO that you have to be sponsored by an attorney? I have such good news. Oh, and I recognize this person who asked the question. Bless her heart. She attended a program that I taught, and this was near Lake Tahoe. This was a delightful venue near Lake Tahoe. So nice to see this attendee. Yes, in the world of ePCT, anybody can set up their own account. You don't have to be a practitioner. You can be a paralegal. You can be a docket clerk. You can set up your own account. You can do what it takes to gain access to a file in ePCT. You can click through and look at form IB301, and there's a secret code number in the lower right-hand corner that will make it so you can have access to the file. You can then share it among your colleagues in a collaborative workplace setting. Yeah, there's none of this weird artificial stuff like with private pair, where only certain people can have control and then they have to delegate the access to certain other people. No, it's not like that at all. It's the way that you would want it to be. Will I discuss how to link PCT applications to ePCT? Yes, I'll discuss that. Yes, absolutely. How do you get reluctant patent attorneys to set up their own ePCT account? And how do you get them to say, how do you get them to not only say every paralegal has one, that's not enough, or that is enough? Yes, I will work on that. Yeah, I will work on that. Okay. I'll come back to some of the questions, but first let me click through the next couple slides here because there are a couple points I want to get to. We have our first polling question. Here is our first polling question. Here it is. The question is, do you have all of your pending PCT applications already in ePCT in the system that is kind of like private pair? Everybody, let us know. How trendy, modern, and up-to-date are you right now with ePCT in this way? Are all your pending PCT applications already in ePCT in the part of it that is kind of like private pair? And we will soon see how many of our attendees are trendy, modern, and up-to-date. Yes, this will be fun, and we will find out how many of our attendees are not yet trendy, modern, and up-to-date. Yep. All righty, most of our people have responded. I'm going to close the responses and I'm going to share the results, and we are going to find out. I am sharing the results. 39% of our attendees have told us that yes, all of their pending PCT applications, they have successfully loaded them into ePCT in the part of it that is kind of like private pair. Folks, these are the trendy, modern, and up-to-date people. And then we have another 39% that say no, These are the folks who do not yet have all of their pending PCT applications loaded into the part of ePCT that is kind of like private pair. Well, you know you have work to do here, and it's a to-do item. And then we have another 21% who are not sure. Now, if we were in a live in-person event, who knows when life will be normal again, right? But when I would be teaching a live in-person event, what would I do at this point? What I would do is I would go back and have the yes people raise their hands in the room, and then I would have the no people look around and notice who had raised their hands, the ones who are trendy, modern, and up to date. And I would say, now make a plan. And at the next coffee break, everybody who said no, go talk to somebody who raised their hand and have them tell you what it was like to get all their PCT applications loaded into the part of ePCT that is like private pair. Because there's nothing quite like networking during a coffee break to have somebody tell you how they actually got it done. It's one thing if somebody like me standing in the front of the room goes on and on about how you ought to do this, you ought to do that. The person standing in the front of the room, you know, that's one thing. Because, you know, WIPO has me standing there telling you whatever the standard party line is, right? But if you hear it from a real person who works from another law firm just like you, or in a corporate patent department just like you, and if they tell you what it was like from their point of view, that's what it is. But we're not in a live in-person event, right? We are instead sitting, you know, at home in our pajamas attending a webinar or something, and you don't get to network. The no people don't get to network with the yes people. And I'm sorry, you know, it's the world we're in with COVID-19 and everything. But someday, right, maybe life will be back to normal and we'll be able to have in-person events, and the people who check the no box can talk during the next coffee break with the people who checked the yes box. I will be hosting some webinars over the next few weeks where I will talk through what are the steps that you do to start using ePCT, what are the steps that you do to get your old PCTs that are pending loaded into the system, what are the steps that you do so that you can get your newly filed cases into ePCT like this, and so on, and what are the steps that you do so that you can share the access with colleagues. If you're in a corporate patent department, what are the steps that you make your outside counsel do so that they will share with you the access that they have, and so on. Communicating with the client about foreign filings. Anytime we file any patent application that has a chance of being a priority document for later filings, of course, we have to write to the client and tell them to think about the 12-month priority period, because they might want to do foreign filings within 12 months of when that was filed. This is a docket thing. Remember, this is so silly, but we were talking about docketing, right? I get on these other little toots, you know, but docketing now is, we're getting back to docketing. And of course, you have to docket that 12-month priority period. And in particular, it was probably a provisional, in which case you also have to docket 12 months for filing a U.S. non-provisional. We know about that. Anyway, back to the idea that what you're filing is a provisional, which means that within 12 months you're going to want to file a non-provisional. Having said that, you're going to want to save this communication in your file, and for two reasons. Why? Well, one is, what's the purpose of the communication? Well, about 5% of the purpose of the communication is the nominal reason, which is to communicate to the client that they will know that there is a 12-month period. 95% of why you're communicating it is so that the client can't play dumb later and pretend that you didn't tell them about the 12-month period, covering your behind. That's really the main reason for that communication, 95% of it. Yes, 5% of the reason is to actually tell them about the 12 months. We are covering our behind. A lot of the docketing activity is covering our behinds, and we want to just openly admit that to ourselves. Okay, now having said that, let's just hypothetically, just purely hypothetically, imagine that sometimes when we file a US provisional, it's being filed under incredibly painful time pressure. Why? Because something was going to happen later today or maybe tomorrow. And what did we file as that provisional? Well, a stack of PowerPoint slides, or a preprint of an article that was about to be published, or maybe it was something sketched on a napkin. Or, you know, those restaurants where the tablecloths are paper and they roll a new piece of paper out across the table for the next guest in the restaurant. This is back before COVID happened and back when people got to eat in restaurants, right? Remember that, those times? Couldn't have been more than 5 years ago when life was normal. Anyway, the inventor says, yeah, here's my invention, and I wrote it on a paper tablecloth in a restaurant, right? And that becomes the thing that is filed as a provisional patent application. And let's just suppose, purely hypothetically, right, that maybe that was of limited level of disclosure. Like maybe it would not absolutely completely support a full set of patent claims. And maybe is of limited quality in terms of supporting what would be later a full patent application, just hypothetically. So again, hypothetically, I'm sure this has never happened to any of you, but just hypothetically that provisional was of limited quality. If so, what? If so, what I will suggest is we do not simply docket 12 months. If you're the docket clerk and if you somehow, your little antennas have picked up that maybe that provisional was of limited quality, I'll suggest try as hard as you can to get your practitioners to admit that it was of limited quality and maybe gently get them to give you permission to docket a much shorter time period for docketing the next event, which would be the preparation and filing of a full non-provisional patent application as soon as possible after that limited quality provisional got filed, as soon as possible, maybe days, maybe just weeks after that provisional got filed. Obviously, you can't force the practitioners that you work for to do anything, but you do the best you can, right? And if you're a practitioner and if you know in your heart of hearts that you just filed a provisional of very limited quality, I invite you to try to be as honest as you can with yourself and your colleagues in the office that maybe what you should do is resolve to file something of much higher quality as soon as possible after that provisional. As one of our attendees points out in a comment here, or at least docket to file another provisional as soon as possible that is less crummy than the provisional you just filed. Maybe you can file another provisional that's actually half decent, right? Yes, of course. Anyway, these are all docketing opportunities and reminder opportunities, right? Okay, so we have filed a priority document and we're getting ready to file because we're getting close to the end of the 1 year period. And let's say we start preparing a PCT request. What is the PCT request, by the way? That is the document by which we communicate bibliographic data about our PCT application. The PCT request is the document that communicates who are the inventors, who's the applicant, what are we claiming priority from, what is the title. In the case of PCT, it's how we communicate what searching authority we're going to use. And suppose the priority document was filed 364 days ago, which means, of course, we have about 1 day left. Wouldn't it be nice, just hypothetically, wouldn't it be nice if some kind of system somewhere would give you a reminder that you've only got 1 day left to file your PCT? Yes, of course, the docket system is going to give you a reminder, but wouldn't it be nice if there were one more thing that would give you a reminder, just hypothetically? Here it is. If you use ePCT as your way of generating that request, and if you indicated in ePCT that you were going to claim priority from something that was filed 364 days ago, ePCT will send you an email that says, look at this one. This is an actual email I received on February 14th of this year telling me that the deadline for me to file to maintain priority is tomorrow, February 15th. Yeah, ePCT sent me an email reminding me that tomorrow I better file that PCT if I want to maintain priority. Now, you might say, I don't want to be reminded about stuff like that. Well, fine, you can delete this email. It's made of recycled electrons, for goodness sake. But just hypothetically, maybe it's nice to have a reminder that you have, like one more reminder running in parallel with your other sources of reminders about these things, huh? So anyway, there you are. ePCT will remind you with 2 days to go, 3 days to go, 4 days to go, a reminder that your 1 year, that your 12-month period, your 1 year period is coming up on filing your PCT application. Returning to our slides, we have a polling question. All righty, are we ready for another polling question? Sure we are. Have you ever received one of these warnings from the ePCT system? I'm going to launch the question. This warning, the email from ePCT, the email that says you've got 1 or 2, maybe 3 days left to file your PCT application. Have you personally ever gotten one of these warnings from ePCT that says your time is almost up to file your PCT within a 12-month period? This, once again, will tell us which people are trendy, modern, and up to date. Yeah. All right, most of our people have responded. We're going to close it and we're going to share the results. 26% of our attendees, we have more than 500 people attending here, and more than 26% of them say, yeah, they received at least one of these reminder emails from ePCT that told them, you know, in 1, 2, maybe 3 more days, you're about to use up your 12 months for this PCT that you're getting ready to file. These people are trendy, modern, and up to date. We have another 65% who say no, they have not, another 9% who say they are not sure. Back to the docketing that you do when a priority application gets filed. Any application that has the prospect that down the line, it might be later something that you claim priority from, what are some of the docketing tasks that I invite you to consider doing here? One of the docketing tasks I invite you to consider doing is docket to check to make sure that somebody makes that application available to the WIPO DAS system, and docket to make sure that somebody sets up what is called tracking in the DAS system, and docket to make sure that somebody somewhere gets what is called a certificate of availability from the DAS system. We'll talk a little bit about what those things are. If you're the docket clerk and you check for these things, docket for these things, it doesn't mean you personally have to go do these things. It means you're asking the practitioner or maybe a paralegal or an administrative assistant to do these things. What does it mean? It means that the priority application has to be made available. We'll talk about that a little bit. Let's look at some of the questions that come in. 1-day reminder doesn't do much if you are in the US. Well, it does if you keep track of what time it is in Switzerland. Where I am in the mountains of Colorado, it means I have to get it filed by 4 o'clock in the afternoon if I want to get it filed in Switzerland, or by 10 p.m. If I want to get it filed in ROUS. Is there a cost difference between filing directly at ROIB as compared to filing in ROUS? Yeah, the transmittal fee is a little bit cheaper in Switzerland. Can you pay in US dollars? Yes, you can. WIPO is willing to take US dollars. What is DAS? One of our people asks. Oh, I'm glad you asked that question. Go to my blog, the Ant-Like Persistence blog, and then go to the search box and plug in DAS quiz, D-A-S space, Q-U-I-Z, and take the DAS quiz, and you will learn what DAS is. Okay. Sometimes it takes the USPTO many months to put in a provisional in DAS. Yes, because it takes them a while to grant the foreign filing license, for one thing, and it sometimes takes them for a while even to officially decide what the filing date will be that they assign to it. When should this be docketed? I suggest docketing 2 weeks, and then if necessary, redocket it for later periods of time. The DAS system. When you file a provisional, to get it into the DAS system, you need to use an application data sheet with that provisional, not a provisional cover sheet. Then somebody has to set up what is called tracking, and somebody has to do what is called obtaining the certificate of availability. This means somebody has to learn how to use DAS. And again, this means go to my blog. You could also just go to Google and plug in Opedal blog, and you could find my blog that way. Go to the search box and plug in DAS quiz, and you'll learn about DAS. I will also be offering a webinar all about DAS in about 2 months, so that'll be another opportunity. Okay, we're going to have 3, count them, 3 polling questions. Is this fun or what? Okay. Here's the first polling question. Do you have a WIPO user ID and password? This is, again, separating the trendy, modern, and up-to-date people from the rest. I'm delighted to see that quite a few people are saying yes. Look at this. Look at this. All right, we're going to share the results so far. 83% of our attendees say yes, they have a WIPO user ID and password. 14% say no. That's trendy, modern, and up to date. A WIPO user ID and password. You know where I'm going with this, folks. Everyone should have a WIPO user ID and password. You don't have to be a patent practitioner. You don't have to be admitted to practice before the USPTO. Everybody can have one, and everyone should have one. By the way, it's not supposed to be tied to your role. It's not like the docket department has a WIPO user ID and password. No, each individual human being in the docket department should have their own WIPO user ID and password. And it's easy to do, and most of you already know it's easy. You just go to the WIPO website and click once or twice. It's very easy to do it. Okay, then we go to the follow-up question, which is, do you have so-called strong authentication? Because what happens is once you get your WIPO user ID and password, you then have to do two-factor authentication, which is that either it gets sent to your cell phone or an app on your phone or whatever. But there's a second thing that you do in addition to a password, so that you've really authenticated yourself in the WIPO systems. And I'm absolutely delighted to see how many people are saying yes here. I'm going to go ahead and close this and share it. 80% of our attendees have so-called strong authentication with their WIPO user ID and password. I love it. I absolutely love it. All righty. And now our third question in this little group. Do you already routinely load all of your priority patent applications, all your priority applications into the DAS system? We're talking really trendy, modern, and up to date here. All right, most of our people have responded. I'm going to go ahead and share the results. Only 17% of our attendees said that they routinely load all of their priority applications into the DAS system. 60% said no, 22% were not sure. Well, you can tell from the way that I have been leading up to this, you can tell from the way I asked this question, that of course I'm recommending that everybody routinely load all of their priority applications into the DAS system. Why? Well, there are a bunch of reasons. The main reason, and I'll be talking about this several times in the next few minutes, the main reasons are that when the time comes to set up your PCT request, and you say, I'm going to be claiming priority from such and such a previous application, you always wonder, what if I got a digit wrong when I typed it into the request? It will cross-check against DAS, and if you got a digit wrong, you'll find out right away. And on the other hand, if you got a perfect match, then you'll know that you typed it right. One of the people here is asking, if you change firms, should you get a new user ID? It turns out you don't have to. You can just update your email address in the WIPO user ID system and just change your email address to the email address that you have in your new firm. So it's very easy to change. Is it necessary for US provisionals or for international application filings? Yes, they should all be loaded into DAS. How do we do changes or modifications in submitted applications based on client requests? Yes, ePCT lets you do follow-on filings. For example, 92 BIS requests and stuff. It's very convenient. Do you recommend going back to provisionals that were filed within the last year and loading them into DAS? Absolutely, yeah, and it's a very smart thing to do. You'll use Form PTO SB 39 to do that. It's a very smart thing to do. Absolutely. In my upcoming DAS webinar, I'll be talking about that. How do you load your priority application into the DAS system? No, they are not automatically loaded by the USPTO. Use Form PTO SB 39. How do you manage when someone leaves your firm and they still have access through ePCT? Is there an easy way to update it? Yes, the designers of ePCT made it so that with one click, you can handle the fact that somebody had their last day of work and they should no longer have access in ePCT. There's a way with one click. Yes, I'll be covering that in a future webinar. It's very easy to handle somebody's last day of work. If you decide to let a provisional lapse and let it stay as a trade secret, the DAS system keeps that secret and it never falls into the wrong hands. Is there a difference between PDX and DAS? Yes, there is. Eventually, PDX is probably going to go away. If you use an ADS and allow participation in document exchange, does that automatically make the application available in DAS and PDX? Yes, it should. But you should automatically verify it yourself by going to the DAS system and getting a certificate of availability. Is the opt-in, opt-out feature of the ADS the DAS option? Yes. Don't check the box. Have the self-control to not check the box in the ADS. Back to our slides. Back to our slides here, folks. We have so much fun stuff to talk about. SAOSIT, a 6-letter initialism. Google it, SAOSIT, Google it, and you will be fascinated to see what the first hit is in Google for that 6-letter initialism. Same applicant or successor in title in Paris Convention Article 4. This is the stuff only nerds could love. The main thing here, and many of you already know this, is that when you're filing in a second country, for example, in a PCT, the applicant in that second application needs to be the same applicant as the applicant in your priority filing or successor in title. To do that, that US provisional that got filed should have a non-inventor applicant identified so that that non-inventor applicant can match what is the applicant later when the PCT gets filed. Notice that a mere provisional cover sheet isn't going to even identify a non-inventor applicant. You need to use an ADS for your provisional. It means that when you're filing the provisional, you need to rub a crystal ball and predict who the applicant is going to later be for the PCT. Yes, we all have to have crystal balls that we can rub and predict who our applicant will be at PCT time. There are highly visible litigations that some of us have read about where applicants screwed up SAOSIT and the result is the patents got invalidated. There are CRISPR litigations, for example. We do not want to be the ones who someday resulted in a client losing a patent because we screwed up SAOSIT. From the docket point of view, why is this important? Well, the main thing, I guess, is the docket people need to try to shame the patent practitioners into filing their US provisionals responsibly. And it mostly means not using provisional cover sheets. It mostly means using ADSs. Can you obtain a certificate of availability via ePCT? Asks one of our attendees. No, you do it via the WIPO DAS system. That's how you do it. Oh, the poll is still up. Would I please change the slides? Thank you so much. I'm so sorry. Thank you. Okay, so now the slide is actually up to date. All righty, same applicant or successor in title. Thank you so much for the 6 people that reminded me that I had not yet updated the screen. Bless you. Bless you. Thank you so much. Okay, now, what else can we say about this? Did I mention that you should probably not be using provisional cover sheets? Yeah, I mentioned that. Now, if you missed your 12-month priority period for filing your second application in your second office of filing, for example, missing your PCT period, if you're the docket person, what should you then docket? Well, docket priority plus 14 for the filing of a request for the restoration of the right of priority. WIPO has a very helpful web page for restoration of the right of priority. This is a web page that people visit when they are feeling really miserable because they missed the 12 months and they think that their career is about at an end because they screwed up really badly. A page of broken dreams. But it's a very important page and it details the various patent offices around the world and the extent to which you have at least a chance of succeeding at a restoration of the right of priority. And from the docket point of view, what you do not want to do is miss that 14 months. Anyway, so we have the WIPO webpage that talks about restoration of the right of priority. And as you will see when you click around there are two possible ways that you might request restoration of the right of priority. And one way is that you might be able to establish that when you missed the 12 months, it occurred despite the exercise of due care. The other possibility is that maybe all you can really say is that you didn't intend to miss the 12 months, that it was unintentional. In general, probably if you're a US filer, you're going to want to use ROIB rather than ROUS as the place where you file a PCT if what you're going to do is file a request for restoration of the right of priority. We do not have time today to completely cover why you might prefer ROIB to ROUS. For now, let me just say there are a bunch of good reasons why ROIB may be the better choice. Basically because maybe you'll be able to do a due care request rather than a mere unintentional request. Now, once you have filed your PCT application, what do you want to communicate to the client? Well, you clearly need to tell the client about the 30-month date, priority date plus 30 months. The client is also going to have to be told that the PCT application is going to be published at P+18, priority date plus 18 months. I mention this depending on whether the client is a repeat offender. They've filed many, many PCTs, or maybe it's the first time this ever came up. If it's the first time it ever came up, the client might literally not know that these things get published. And you would hate to have the client later say, I didn't even know these things get published. So you got to make sure they realize it's going to be published if there's any chance they didn't already know this. Now, at some point, the PCT application will be visible to you in what is called your workbench. That is to say, the part of ePCT that is sort of like private pair. Anyway, once your PCT application becomes visible to you in the part of ePCT that is sort of like private pair, that is to say, it becomes visible in your workbench, there is a thing called your pub preview. You can preview what will later be the front page of your PCT publication. And I suggest previewing it and send it to the client for review, the head of the business unit or whatever. And then if there's any misunderstanding or confusion about like who are the inventors or who's listed as the first named inventor or something, this is a chance to smoke that out and get it straightened out. And if necessary, you could use a 92 BIS change request to straighten it out. A real example, early on in my career, one of the clients that made my practice possible is a company that had by this point given me something like 12 patent applications, 12 PCTs to file, and I was on case number 12 or something, and I somehow fat-fingered the name of the company. No, it was worse than that. I fat-fingered the name of the chief inventor, the founder of the company. I spelled his name wrong, couldn't spell his name right. And there it was. I looked at the publication preview and there was his name spelled wrong. And if I had not checked this, what would have happened eventually is the 18-month pub would have come around and his name would have been spelled wrong. And the inventor might naturally have wondered, if I couldn't even spell his name right, how many other things did I screw up that he had not yet noticed? Thank goodness I looked at the publication preview and noticed my mistake. And then I did a 92 BIS change request and fixed it. And then when the 18-month pub came around, his name was spelled correctly. Well, this is your opportunity to catch mistakes in a similar way. Now, how could I have avoided screwing that up? Well, I could have used the ePCT address book where you don't even ever hand type anything. You just drag and drop from the address book. And then once you spell the inventor name once correctly in the address book, it's spelled correctly all the way down the line. Is there any way to change the order of inventors listed? Yeah, use a 92 BIS change request and make sure you do it before technical preparations for publication day. There are 2 countries, Tanzania and Luxembourg. I used to say 3 countries, but now only 2, where if you want to do a direct national phase entry, you'd have to do it by priority date plus 19 unless you file a demand. Tanzania and Luxembourg are in this category. How many of us, show of hands, have ever done a national phase entry in Tanzania or Luxembourg individually? Answer, not very many. You could always reach either of those places by means of a regional phase entry, a repo, or EPO. But if you care about Tanzania or Luxembourg really a lot, come back and read this slide about 1 million times, and this could conceivably be something that you want to handle with a specific docket. Could I say a few words about what a 92 bis action is? Come back to my webinar that will be in about 6 weeks, where we will talk about 92 bis actions. And also go to my blog and go to the search box and plug in 92 bis. And I explain it in great detail in my blog. Okay, Docketing PCT new filings. Every time a new PCT application is filed, docket the following 5 things. And for those of us who are docket clerks, go and look and see if these 5 things are things that you docket every time you file a new PCT application. And if you do, you get to have a nice OCD burn. You get to have an obsessive compulsive disorder burn, a strong, happy feeling. It's like the opiate receptors in the brain. If you docket these 5 things every time a new PCT application is filed, you get a reward. Form RO105, which is kind of like a filing receipt. Form RO102 that says that you paid the right fees, or if they think you didn't pay the right fees. Later, the record copy gets transmitted to the International Bureau, and the IB will send you Form 301, which is kind of like a filing receipt. This also has the secret code number down in the corner that you might need to gain access to the file in your workbench. IB 304, which says that the certified copy of the priority document reached the International Bureau, perhaps through the DAS system. Form ISA 202, which is the searching authority's way to let you know that they received the search copy. And of course, as we will discuss, Form ISA 202 also allows you to then docket to check for receipt of the international search report and the written opinion. Oh, and one of our attendees whose name starts with a J says, we docket for these 5 things, and this person has a smiley face. Good for you, person whose name starts with a J. Any suggestion for dates for docketing the 5 forms? Well, it depends which receiving office you use, of course. If you use ROUS, I would typically docket 2 weeks for the first 2 forms, and then maybe another week for the International Bureau forms and another week for the Searching Authority forms. Docketing late declarations under 4.17 by 16 months. That's a good thing. I'm going to be doing a whole webinar about PCT declarations, and we will discuss docketing of the PCT declarations. That's a very good topic. Form PCT 105 will give you the foreign filing license authorization. That's if you're using ROUS, of course. Yeah, that's true. Boy, some of these questions are very nice, nerdly questions. Okay. Is it possible to get the search copy by email? We only get it by physical mail. Well, it depends which searching authority you use. I'm going to do a webinar on how to pick a searching authority and what the pros and cons are. Okay, back to our slides, folks. Anyway, then once you filed your PCT application, you're going to want to docket priority date plus 22 months because, of course, that might be your due date for filing a demand. Once you get Form IB 301, you should have access to the PCT application in your workbench if you don't already. When the ISA 202 shows up, of course, you're going to want to docket 3 months to check for receipt of your search report and written opinion. ePCT will calculate all these same dates. You'll look in the timeline, and then you can cross-check these with your own dates that you calculated yourself. Now, what about those cases that you filed a year ago that you don't yet have in your workbench, that are not yet in the part of ePCT that is like private pair? Well, obviously, you want to get those loaded into ePCT, right? Of course. Did I mention that it's good to start using ePCT if you weren't using it already? Did I mention that? Maybe I did. Okay, the 4 and 16 date. What is the 4 and 16 date? That is the very important date by which you need to make your priority claims if you're going to. This is within 4 months of when the PCT application was filed, or within 16 months of when the priority application was filed, whichever is later. Why do we care? Well, because there are consequences for missing the 4 and 16 date. If you fail to make your priority claim accurately within the 4 and 16 date, in general, in most patent offices around the world, it means that the priority claim is irrevocably lost. What are the consequences of losing a priority claim irrevocably? Well, quite often it means that the patent that would later be granted is a dead patent, because probably there were intervening prior art events that is going to mean the patent would be invalid. Suppose you got a digit wrong or something in your priority claim. Well, that probably also means the priority claim is lost, or you got a, you put down the wrong 2-letter code for the patent office that you say you filed your priority application in. Wouldn't it be nice, just hypothetically here, folks, wouldn't it be nice if when you're filling in your PCT request and you're putting in like the 2-letter code for what patent office you say you filed your priority application in, and you're putting in the digits of your filing date, and you're putting in all the digits of your priority application number, wouldn't it be nice if, just hypothetically, stay with me on this, folks, wouldn't it be nice if somehow when you filled in all that priority stuff and you say to yourself, what if I typed it wrong? What if I got a digit wrong? Wouldn't it be nice if something about the way that you filled in the request would go check against some source that is guaranteed to not be wrong? And if it matched, you would know that it was absolutely right. You didn't get any digits wrong. Wouldn't that be nice? Just hypothetically, folks. I mean, just stay with me on this one. Wouldn't that be nice? Huh? And then you wouldn't have to worry about the 4 and 16 date and only finding out later that you got a digit wrong in a priority claim. Wouldn't that be nice? Or to put it differently, if whatever way the practitioner was going to fill in the request didn't do a cross-check like that, and later a 4 and 16 date came and went, and only later it turned out the practitioner screwed up the priority date, and then later they got sued for malpractice because the client lost their priority claim. That would be really bad, right? Right? You wouldn't want that. In fact, wouldn't you say that it probably almost rises to the level of malpractice if we don't use whatever system it is that would cross-check our priority claims against a known accurate source of what is all the digits of that priority application number? Let's think about this for a minute. Where am I going with this? Who knows where I'm going with this? ePCT, yeah. Guess what? When you enter that priority application number into ePCT, it cross-checks whatever you just entered with what was in DAS 11 months ago. If they match, it'll show it right there on the screen, because you're going to be putting in the application number, you're going to be putting in the DAS access code, which is the same as the confirmation number in pair. And if they match, you'll see it on the screen. And if they don't match, you'll see it on the screen. And if they don't match, you now can sit there and try to figure out what's wrong. Maybe somebody typed the digit wrong, or maybe somehow it didn't get into the DAS system properly or whatever. But if what you were doing was filling it into PCT safe, there is no cross-check like this. Or if you were filling them in a PDF type PCT request, there's no cross-check. So folks, it's good to use ePCT. Does this mean you don't need to docket the 4 and 16 date? Well, no, I guess it doesn't mean that. But it does mean that the opportunities to get a digit wrong, oh, look at this. We have an attendee whose initials are CF, and she says, I love this feature. Yes, this is an attendee who has been in at least 6 of my classes over the years. The first time she was ever in one of my classes was when I was teaching a class in San Diego, California, 10 years ago, San Diego, California. And Carol Bidwell was the main teacher, and I was like carrying Carol Bidwell's bag. And yes, boy, oh boy, this brings back memories. Is PCT Safe still available? Oh, attend my webinar next Wednesday, and I will show you a graph that shows you the ever diminishing number of patent offices that still support PCT Safe. Yes, it is still available, but as time goes on, fewer and fewer offices are going to be supporting PCT Safe. Okay, so you need to be using ePCT. And for this cross-check to work, think about what we're saying here. ePCT can cross-check your priority claim that you're typing into the request only if you previously did the tedious business of loading that priority application into DAS 11 months ago. Yeah, you need to do your work ahead of time, way back when you filed that priority application. Get the dang thing into the DAS system way back then, so that now when you're getting ready to file the PCT, this cross-check can take place. And now you are protected against this category of malpractice. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Did I mention it's good to use DAS? I think I did. Did I mention it's good to use ePCT? I think I did. Okay, pressing on. Now, withdrawing your PCT application to avoid publication. Years ago, people did this by sending a fax to Switzerland. The faxes came into a room. I got a tour a couple of years ago when I visited the folks at WIPO. They called it the room of broken dreams. This is the room where people sent faxes because they were miserable, sad. They think they're never going to get a patent. Maybe they got an unfavorable search report or something. And they are going to give up any chance of getting a patent because they don't want it to be published. The room of broken dreams. Well, WIPO doesn't receive faxes anymore. And so now if you're going to withdraw your PCT to keep it from being published, of course, you file it using ePCT. But anyway, when is the last possible day to file such a request to withdraw the application to keep it from being published? And the answer, of course, is you have to do it by technical preparations for publication day. Everybody knows that, right? Everybody who's attending technical preparations day. How do you know what technical preparations day is? Well, that's easy. Many of us who are attending this program already know how to calculate technical preparations day. You start by working out when is it going to be published, if it's going to be published. Answer, you take the priority date and you add 18 months to it. That might be a Thursday. If it is, now you know what publication day is. Or you keep counting until you hit a Thursday, and that's when publication day will be, because PCTs are always published on Thursdays. That's publication day. Then what do you do? Well, now you back off 15 days, and that's 2 weeks in a day, and that's a Wednesday. That's technical preparations for publication day, except not if it's a holiday in Switzerland. When are the holidays in Switzerland? Well, let's see. Holidays in Switzerland. Well, my favorite for a holiday that you might not know, Pentecost. It turns out Pentecost is a holiday in Switzerland. It's connected with Easter. Anyway, so you back off one more day if necessary, and it might be a Tuesday. That is technical preparations for publication day, and that would be the last possible day for filing your request to withdraw. Well, you have to know when it is because you have to docket that date so that you can go warn the client, hey, if you want to withdraw this thing to keep it from being published, you got to ask by that date. Well, so you calculate all this stuff, and then you want to know, did I do the math right? Well, guess what? You can go look in ePCT for your application, click on the timeline, and they have worked out technical preparations day, and you can compare their calculation with yours. Did I mention it's good to know how to use ePCT? One of our attendees says, I love ePCT. Yes, I do too. Yep. Oh, and you get a very convenient reminder email. Yes, one of our people whose initials are NC points out that if you use ePCT and if you got your case into your workbench, that is to say, into the part of ePCT that is kind of like private pair, ePCT will send you a reminder email that 2 weeks from now will be the last possible day to file the request to withdraw to keep it from being published. Yes. You keep mentioning get it loaded into DAS. Isn't this done automatically by completing the ADS? Well, maybe, except what if you didn't sign the ADS properly? You got the virgules wrong at the bottom or something. Or what if the USPTO failed to act on your ADS properly, which they sometimes do? Or what if they didn't get around to granting the foreign filing license because it got into second level security review and you didn't notice that it didn't get a foreign filing license yet? Yeah, you got to watch them closely at the patent office to make sure they actually granted the foreign filing license. So no, you may not assume that the mere fact that you used an ADS means that it later became available to the DAS system. Okay. When the search report and written opinion shows up, what are the docket consequences? Well, first thing, of course, is you want to receive it as soon as possible. Of course, check the box authorizing email communications. Many ISAs will send the stuff to you by email. Korea is among them. ePCT will notify you when the folks at the IB receive it. Once the search report and written opinion show up, this might change when your demand is due because P+22 might no longer be the date. ISR+3 might end up being a later date, and so you may have to redocket when is the last possible day. for filing your demand. ePCT will also recalculate this for you in the ePCT timeline. Client communications. Ideally, you already gave access in ePCT to the client, perhaps to the inventors, and so the client may learn about the search report and written opinion about the same time that you do. What else? The client will need to be reminded about the fact that maybe they want to do an Article 19 amendment. They'll want to be reminded that maybe they want to do a demand and an Article 34 amendment. ePCT, as I mentioned before, will let you know the due dates. You can compare their calculations with your own. Here's an interesting little tip. I will just mention it and later puzzle over it. But what you can do is file an ADS to start the US national phase and file your IDS right now, perhaps long before the end of the 30 months. And now it's done, and you never have to wonder, what if we forget to file the IDS in the US national phase case that we would someday enter. Next, the Article 19 amendment. When is the last possible day to file your Article 19 amendment? Well, there are 3 different dates. There's 2 months after the search report was mailed, there's prior to technical preparations day, and there's 16 months after the priority date. And you calculate all 3 dates and work out which of those 3 is the last, and that would be the last possible day to file the Article 19 amendment. Those of you who are docket clerks, you already are used to calculating all 3 dates and working out which one is the latest. You can also use ePCT to cross-check, because they will also calculate it, and then you can cross-check that. Okay. After you file your Article 19 amendment, docket to check for receipt of this form, IB 346, and make sure that when the IB 346 shows up, there's a checkbox that either will or will not say that you filed your amendment within the time limit, and hopefully, yes, it will say that you filed within the time limit. Suppose you filed a demand. Well, when did it have to be filed? ISR +3 or P +22, whichever was later. You will have docketed that date. If you had your PCT application in your workbench, you will have received one of these reminder emails. Isn't this nice? They send you an email reminder that the time limit for filing your demand will expire in 2 weeks, but only if you went to the trouble of getting it loaded into your workbench. Did I mention it's good to use ePCT? And did I mention that it's good to make sure that all your pending PCT applications are in your workbench so that you will get reminders like this, which run in parallel with all of your other docket reminder systems? Okay, assuming that you did file a demand, docket to check for receipt. Oh, and if the way you filed it was by filing it in ePCT, you don't have to file your demand in ePCT, but I find it to be the most convenient way to do it. Then check to make sure that you receive form IB 368. Later, if the way you filed your demand was by sending it to the International Bureau, they will then forward it to the Preliminary Examining Authority, or maybe you filed your demand directly with the Preliminary Examining Authority. Either way, you're going to want a docket to make sure that the Preliminary Examining Authority eventually sends you form IPEA 402, and you want to make sure that this form shows up. And then there's a checkbox where there's a place where it will say when the Preliminary Examining Authority says they received it, and you want to make sure that that's correct, that it matches when you say you sent it to the Preliminary Examining Authority. Once you get the IPEA 402, which is where the Preliminary Examining Authority says, yeah, we did receive your demand. Oh, by the way, who files demands, right? Nobody these days. Well, in 90% of cases, nobody files a demand, but in 10% of cases, people do file demands. Anyway, once you get this form, if you did file demand, then docket P +28 to check for receiving the results, namely the IPRP under Chapter 2. And depending on which Preliminary Examining Authority you picked, you may have to pester the Preliminary Examining Authority to do their job on time. Who do you have to pester? Well, I'm thinking here of the USPTO. You sometimes have to pester them to do their job on time. Okay, the end of the international phase, which broadly speaking is 30 months. you don't have to wait till the end of the 30 months. You can do it sooner. And a lot of times it's smart to do it sooner. Why? Well, maybe you got a very favorable search report and written opinion and you want to get on the highway. But you can wait until almost the end. Some offices, of course, are 30 months. Others are, of course, 31 months. You, of course, need to keep very close track of this. You also want to remind the client about it. Wouldn't it be nice? Just hypothetically, wouldn't it be nice if there were some system somewhere that would remind you of this? Just hypothetically. Yeah. Some of you know where I was going with this. If your case is in your workbench in ePCT, the part of it that's kind of like private pair, you'll get an email. The 30-month time limit will expire in 1 month. Yeah. Did I mention it's good to use ePCT? Yeah. Okay, WIPO has this very handy table in the PCT section of the WIPO website, the time limit page that talks about the different offices and what their time limits are. You're going to want to docket the 30-month date, for example, for U.S. national phase entry. There's a short list, the bare minimum of what you can do to just barely satisfy the 30 months, which is basically paying the U.S. base national phase fee. There's a longer list of things you need to do. If you're a corporate patent department, how can you keep tabs on your outside counsel? Make sure that your outside counsel do e-handshakes with you and your corporate patent department. Make sure outside counsel extend access in ePCT to you. Make them give you e-owner access, not merely e-viewer, because as an e-owner, you can then easily and promptly give access to other new people in your department, and then give e-viewer access to your heads of your business units, for example, and to your inventors. Clearly, everybody in your docket department should have access to every pending case in ePCT. It's just common sense, right? Now, rogue filings by attorneys and agents. The attorney or the agent that does filings and forgets to tell the docket desk. I'm sure this never happens in your law firm, and I'm sure it never happens in your corporation. But hypothetically, if it did, in EFS Web, how do you catch it? Well, last 40 ACK receipts. And at least in my firm, there's no choice. My staff people have to go look in the last 40 ACK receipts every day or so, just because someone, me typically, will go off and do a filing and forget to tell people. Another thing to do is to go look in Financial Manager and see if maybe somebody paid a provisional filing fee that doesn't match up with any known file. Regrettably, Patent Center doesn't presently have anything that is a perfect match for the old last 40 ACK receipts that we're used to. Then, of course, you get the transferred in cases where you have no confidence that you even have been told about all the provisionals. And then, of course, you get the independent inventors who come in and they don't even have good enough records that they even know about all the provisionals that they filed. My heart goes out to you if you get one of those. And of course, you're going to have to use Form SB 122 over and over again until you manage to somehow snag access in pair to all those cases, and then use Form SB 39 to get all those cases into DAS, and you have my sympathy on those. Okay, what else? This is just a throwaway, but every time an assignment gets signed, you, the docket folks, have to docket 3 months to make sure that somebody somewhere records it. Why 3 months? Go ask one of the attorneys. It's malpractice not to get it recorded within 3 months. Okay, resources. We're almost done here, folks. Go to the WIPO website. There are enormous number of very helpful resources. The USPTO's PCT help desk, the people who answer the phone there are wonderful. Many of you know this already. The PCT listserv, go to that web address and join that listserv if you have not already done so. WIPO has a PCT distance learning course that is wonderful. You log in, you go through something like 31 chapters. There are little quizzes. At the end, you get a certificate. You show that certificate to your boss. I promise you, your boss will give you a raise. I'm serious. It is not easy to pass that course, but if you do, it's really an accomplishment. The Schwegman firm has a series of YouTube recorded lectures, 2 days long, 14 hours of me, frankly, 14 hours of me teaching about PCT. This is a mix of good news and bad news, right? It's 14 hours of PCT, which is dry, dull material, but it's also free of charge, and it covers a lot of PCT stuff. And go on YouTube and you can find them. Just plug in Schwegman PCT. It's a very helpful free resource. And subscribe to the Ant-like Persistence blog and click in the PCT section and you will find about 200 old blog posts by me on the subject of PCT, and just read them all one by one. Read them all the old PCT posts. I have 2 books coming out. One is a book called Opidol on PCT and a book on PCT forms. It reviews one by one every form you might ever receive from a PCT patent office and what to do when you receive that form. And if you would like to hear about the books when they finally get published, subscribe to my blog or subscribe to the listserv and I'll publish something there. We have just about used up our time, and with that, what I will mention is that there is an evaluation questionnaire that will pop up on the screen in just a minute. Please make time to answer the evaluation questions. It will help WIPO to make better decisions in the future about how to do their outreach activities. And with that, I will say thank you very much.